Well, today we're up off we're facing the some game management land in the upper part of the state of South Carolina, wildlife management land, WMA land, I think. And so it's a real neat place. I've ridden motorcycles up in here a lot. I've hunted up in here a lot. And believe it or not, I've come up here many times over the past 30, 40 years to pray. There's a road that goes way back through the mountains right in front of the car. And I've walked down that road many a day just by myself, nobody else around, and I just take time to pray and seek the face of the Lord. And so I enjoy the outdoors. But today we want to pick up with the book of James, where we left off at last week and our last session. In verse 5 of chapter 1, the Bible says, "But," talking about asking God for wisdom, "let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed." And this here is quite a challenge. Let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. We ask, believing and knowing that God's going to answer our prayer. And sometimes our prayers are weak, and I must admit mine are too, because my faith is weak when I pray. It's just very, very hard sometimes to be super strong, or as strong as we ought to be. But we're told here to ask in faith, nothing wavering. Just don't hold back. And we shouldn't hold back anything in our request. And then in our belief that God is able and willing to answer that prayer, about granting us the wisdom to understand the trial and the troubles that we're facing. Verse 7, "For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord." So a man who's wavering, you needn't expect that prayer is going to be answered. You just needn't expect that. Verse 8, "A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways." And that's so true. A little commentary, a little insert here in verse 8 about a double-minded man. It says he's unstable in all of his ways. So a man tells you one thing, then he's telling you something else. He's double-minded. He says yea, then he says nay. He says it's good, then he says it's bad. He says you can, then he says you can't. Well, he's a double-minded man. He's unstable in all of his ways. I admire people who are firm in their ways, stable in their ways. They know where they're going in life, and they work to get there, and they move forward through their life. And I've seen people in business that way. I've seen people building houses that way. They knew where they were going. Their mind was set. Their path was before them, and they went that way and accomplished the goal. I love to watch some of these mountain climbers who climb the mountains, and they've got a plan. It's not a plan of retreat. It's a plan to get to the top. And I admire those guys and the ability that they have and the frame of mind that they use to move forward, even though the conditions can be very, very difficult. But single-minded, not double-minded. And then verse 9, "Let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted." When the Lord blesses you with something, and you like me are a brother of low degree, rejoice in that he is exalted. What about that? Rejoice in that he is. And when he is exalted. There's a lot more of us brothers of low degree than there are brothers of high degree. But when God blesses you and lifts you up, rejoice. The Bible tells us very clearly that we can rejoice. We should. Verse 10, "But let the rich, and that he is made low, because as the flower of the grass he shall pass away." He's got a few more things to say here about the rich, and that he is made low. But the rich, and that he is made low, let him rejoice in that. I'm sure that'd be very humbling for a rich man to be taken down and to be made low. I always think of Job when I think about a very wealthy man being made into nothing, and then also to lose his health and his strength. But yet in all that, he didn't curse God. He did not. And so that's a great example of a man who lost it all and yet kept walking with God. And so right here is a great admonition for those who are rich. And there are people who are rich, and there are rich believers, and I'm glad they are. And it's good that everybody's not poor. Somebody has to pay the bills on stuff. And so, but if the rich man, if he is made low, if he's not exalted, he is told to rejoice in that. And then he goes on here to give the reasons why that the rich may be made low, because as the flower of the grass he shall pass away. And so it is. And if you look, of course, into some of these surroundings here, you can see some blooms. This stuff that blooms in the late summer. Fall's just a few days away. But it's just a matter of time that these blooms will all be gone, and fall will be here, and the leaves will be turning, and it'll be another world and another display of God's goodness and the beauty that he gives in the color of this world. But still, the point is, these beautiful blooms and flowers that you see, they're just here for a time, and then they pass away. And so it is with the rich man and all of his glory. He's just here for a while, and then he passes away. I've read several commentaries written on, not commentaries, but several biographies written about rich and famous people. You know, they can afford to have them written. We poor folks, we find it hard to have one written about us, and it wouldn't be interesting if we did. But I've read several of rich men, and how they came to their wealth and what they did with it when they got it. And very interesting, I thought. Very, very interesting to see what they had. But you know, after 70, 80, 90 some years, one man lived almost to be 100. They passed away. And when you look back, that seems like such a short period of time for a man to be upon the earth in the scope of everything. And so, therefore, here's the reason why the rich should also rejoice, even though he might be made low, because he's like the flower of the field. He's here for a while. He may bloom beautiful. He may live in the most beautiful house and drive the most beautiful cars that you have ever seen. And he may dress beyond compare, may be able to travel the world and afford anything he wants, any food, any yacht, anything. But he should remember that this is just for a while. This is all going to be left behind. And I like to think on the other side of that, when some of us who don't have a whole lot, we're going to remember that we're going to have a whole lot more one of these days when we pass in this world. And then look on in verse 11. For the sun is no sooner risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth. And the grace of the fashion of it perisheth. So also shall the rich man fade away in his ways. And I think I've covered that already in my earlier statements about the rich man. Just a matter of time for all of us. But here for the rich, he certainly gives some words to the wealthy right here about their wealth and about their true journey in life and about how it's really going to be. All have passed away. All the people who've been wealthy before, even Solomon. Nobody's ever had the wealth that Solomon had. Nobody. There's been another king of old from over in West Africa, Suriname or something like that. I can't quite remember his name. He was very, very wealthy, probably beyond compare, but not as wealthy as Solomon. But nonetheless, he died one day. And then later on, if you study the history of rich men, there's been some, like John D. Rockefeller. He was the richest man in the world for a good while. But sooner or later, John D. died as well. Thankfully, he professed faith in Jesus Christ, so maybe we'll meet John D. when we get to the other side. I hope we do. And then verse 12, Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Now notice this verse right here. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation. Blessed, happy is that man that endureth the temptation. When temptation comes, we walk on through it. We keep going. We get up. We find some way to go on in life. We find some way to look up to the Lord and go on. Like my daddy used to tell me, he said, son, your eyes look forward, and God's put them in front of your head and not the back of your head. That's pretty good, you know, from my dad. I've always remembered that. And keep looking forward. No need to look back. And so when temptation comes, don't quit. Don't throw down and run. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't despair. But remember, endure the temptation. Stick with it. Stick with it. And you'll find that the Lord will bless you when you're tried. It says, He shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love Him. So there's a reward coming for those who stick through temptations. and don't yield to them. And temptations can be in many-fold sources, many-fold types. But remember, when they come, endure through them. The Lord will help us through them, and He'll guide us through them. And He'll make life to be much better because of them, in spite of everything. But remember this, there's a reward coming at the end of the way. Stick it out. Things may be tough, may be very discouraging, and they may be that way for many years. Sometimes temptations and trials are not over in a day. Sometimes temptations may last for many years. They may last for many, many years. And you may live through them, and you may think, well, this is never going to end. But lo and behold, one day it'll come to pass, and that temptation will be gone. And you'll be glad that you have endured through it, and you did the right thing, and you didn't do the wrong thing. I could give you some illustrations, but I don't want to do that. It might hurt other people. But I can name some temptations that I've personally known, that I've walked through, and I was glad when I looked back that I did, that I didn't throw the towel in, that I didn't call it quits, that I didn't turn back on God, that I did not quit the church, that I did not turn from my family, I did not turn to negative things, and so I endured the temptation. And I look that the Lord will give me a crown for that one day. And you can do the same thing. Stick with it. Stick with it. No matter how hard it may get, just stick with it. I remember when I was growing up, my mother worked at a place called Yadkin Finance Company in Elkin, North Carolina. And I remember she worked there many years when I was growing up. And I remember I go in that office, and there was a counter there where people come in to pay their bills. But on the back wall, back behind where my mother sits, she was the lead head secretary, bookkeeper, whatever there, and she was good at that. And back behind her was a hide of a bear hanging on the wall. And it's the first time I ever saw it was in that office, and I've remembered it to this day. And it said on there, if it takes your hide, be a man. Had some other good admonitions on it too. But I'll never forget that bear's hide being hung on that wall back behind my mama. And I don't think she killed it and put it there either, but it was something somebody had bought and hung up. But I thought, boy, that is really good. If it takes your hide, be a man. I've never forgot that. And so just think about the bear hide sometimes when you're going through temptations. And remember that the Lord can and will see you through it. So stick with it. And remember, there is a crown of life promised to those who endure temptations. Well, friends, I'm out of time again, and I appreciate you joining in, and we'll pick back up next time in the book of James. We'll pick up in verse 13, and we'll carry on and see all that James has got to say. I've taught through the book of James many times, but I've never exhausted it. So may God bless you. If you've never received Jesus Christ, why not do so today?